Rishwan will join in a couple of minutes, so we'll discuss this assignment. Now, what is the reason of studying this unit? Today, as you know, without looking at any slides, without looking at what we understand of information system, today what is happening is because of the internet, what you are seeing is that lots of data and information is being currently created, disseminated, and also consumed. So what is happening is, if I look at this from a point of view of just our environment, you see a lot of social media being used, right? And social media, you have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and what tends to happen is that in this particular environment, you look at, there is a lot of media being, data being created. Now, if I take this from a personal context to a professional context, what you will see is that if we take it to, when I say professional, we take it to a company perspective, you will see that within companies now, because of digitization, computerization, and the availability of internet, what is happening is that a lot of companies are storing lots of different types of information. And this particular unit, when we talk about management information system, the reason why they were invented, or how the concept came across, was that as data and information, as data was being collected by organizations, over a point in time, this data was transformed into, by doing reporting or reorganizing the data into something called information. And this information, when it was available to people who in the management position, or people in the organization which were responsible for actually taking decisions, they, on the basis of this information, actually made decisions, and these decisions then allowed the companies, to make, say, for example, take a call on certain, action, or take a call on, something to do with making a decision on whether to buy this, how to react to a competitor, or in some cases how to market, or basically send this information or some sort of a promotion advertisement to its customers. Now, all this required accumulation of what is called the the data, and this then had to be stored within some sort of a system within the organization. So when we look at utilizing this, so when we look at utilizing the details which allow the organizations to collect data, store data, record them, and then reuse it for the purposes of reaching out to its customers to provide products and services, is basically nothing but some sort of an information system. Management information system means that what we are trying to basically look at doing is that when we look at this system being utilized for information for decision making, that system then can be classified as something called management information system. Now, there are different types of management information systems available. A management information system is a system which actually has a lot of information that can be used by people in positions of power or positions of authority to make decisions, and this allows them to carefully coordinate, control, and analyze data, which then can be utilized for meaningful purposes for the company. Now, if we look at management information system, there are different types. We'll get into that in a minute, but different types of systems, they are all designed in such a way that when you understand an MIS, it has some key parts or components. Some of the key components of the MIS include things like, there will be a software that you will use. That software will be residing on a hardware. So when we say a simple system like a PC, it can become an MIS system because it has, it's a Windows-based PC or a Mac PC, and then it has software installed on it. This software then allows you to interact with or pull out data, save data on the system. And when we look at an MIS, it allows you to do customized reporting. So that means you are able to generate reports, you are able to store data, manipulate data, and then allow basically that data to be created into some sort of reports. And this is then utilized as an output from the MIS. Now, when we talk about the process of looking at creating an MIS, I think we can divide it into three parts. The first part being that you have something called hardware, there is something called software, and the people who utilize hardware and software or use the system will be grouped into one. Now, if I look at the second part of the MIS could be a process wherein the data is being collected into the organization or the system. And that would mean that there is a source through which you can input data. Like, for example, sometimes you scan documents and they go into a database system, or for example, an email comes, it goes into a CRM system. If there's if the telephone call which is currently being recorded and it gets into a storage wherein the telephone data is recorded and archived for training and monitoring purposes, as we say, then all this forms of data, whether it's in the form of voice, whether it's in the form of a email which has come in or a scan document that you've sent into the data, is all getting stored into some sort of a central repository. And that central repository then processes that data to primarily look at creating some sort of a report or information. So your manager might at some point in time say that, okay, I've had 20 calls which have come in, which have been recorded. So imagine a call center. Now the call center manager sometimes logs into an agent system and listens to the conversation. The reason why he's able to listen to that conversation is because the data or the conversation between the customer and the call agent has been recorded onto a hard drive. And this is voice data which has been recorded. But how is he able to retrieve it? Because that system which records that data allows him to play back the voice or go back to a recording which has been done on the system and listen to it at a particular point in time. Could be classified as a very simple form of a system or an information system which is able to record data in the form of calls. Now he can generate reports from that system which would basically say how many calls were made by an agent, how many customers were attended, how many hang-ups were there, or how many were in unanswered calls. This facility which has been programmed into that system allows this information system to basically derive meaningful information, and that is why it is called an MIS. And that in a form, if I say literally, which is a crude form which I was defining, but in a literal sense, that would mean that the manager is able to draw out reports, create custom reports, to say how many calls were connected, how many calls were engaged, how many calls lasted over 10 seconds. Any form of such report could be generated. How many calls were a hang-up, how many calls. So these kind of things, were basically the reason why you look at the MIS. Now, if we go into understanding, I won't probably recap the whole unit here, but basically looking at the main points that you've studied in this unit, that includes things like why why MIS systems are used and how they can be utilized by the organization. That basically is covered in your learning outcome 1. In the second learning outcome, we are looking at understanding how the MIS can actually improve the organization's performance. So when I say performance, it means if you today have an email, which 20, 30, 40 years back, if you look at, there was, before the advent of internet in 1995, there was nothing called emails. So all the data was actually stored on, paper. So if you had to retrieve data, imagine, an income tax office in India or an income tax office or some sort of an organization elsewhere in the world. If they had to retrieve data, how would they retrieve data? They had to basically go into physical records, look for the records, go into a file or a ledger, pull that record out, and then at some point in time, get back to the customer if there was a query which was coming across from a taxman. But today, because all this data is stored electronically, this has improved the ability of the staff to be able to retrieve this information. And this utility, which has been, possible for the retrieval, is primarily happening because of some sort of a data information system which is there. So in the second learning outcome of the assignment brief, what you're essentially looking at is how MIS systems have transformed the performance, efficiency, productivity within an organization. And how does this as a tool, when it is installed within the organization, allows the management to access reports which allow them to keep track on the strategic goals and objectives which need to be achieved by its employees or by the employees in the organization. So in general, in the second learning outcome, in the first one we understand what is MIS, in the second one and the types of MIS. So there are knowledge-based systems, there are customer relationship management systems, there are enterprise systems, there are accounting systems. These are all different types of MIS. Over the years, different types of MIS has been created, and the reason why they've been created is because they suit the purpose of different types of individuals within the organization. Just summarizing it, and the third learning outcome is basically focused on if The situation now is that you understood in the first learning outcome what is MIS, types of MIS, how they are used. In the second one, you've understood how MIS are deployed within the organization and how they help in bringing efficiency, performance, productivity, or resourcefulness from a point of view of getting jobs done. In the third learning outcome, the chapter talks about, essentially understanding how you would deploy an MIS within an organization. So how would you plan to deploy an MIS? How is an MIS created? So these three things, if you study within this unit of management information systems, it gives you a good understanding of how information systems managers, as we call them, ISMs, or people within the IT department who manage information, the MIS managers, are able to then deploy or introduce a new system. A simple example for learning outcome 3 that I would give is, you have a small business, and that small business has 2-3 employees. So you can ask the accountant to actually do pay slips, and that part of the operation is outsourced to a third-party organization. As your business expands in a number of years, in 10 years' time, you have 200 employees working. So at some stage, what you will do is, rather than outsource it to an accountant because the operation has become large, you would look at deploying or buying a system from the market, which will be deployed in your own organization, and the accounts HR department will have access to payroll, generating salaries, generating reports and things like that. But how do you choose a system that you want to bring in? Now, in the market, there might be 10, but how would you zero in which meets your requirement? And then what is the price point at which it comes? Deployment, how good it is and how quicker or smooth it is, how easy is it to use by the users, and then finally, will the system be efficient or useful enough for you to be able to bring this operation in-house and help you save costs as a CEO when you look at in the organization. Now that is what the third learning outcome concentrates on. So you have to think of ways, how do you shortlist? You ask for a number of quotations, you create a requirement brief that these are my minimum requirements. Then you do a sampling or a test or a pilot in the market to say, when you invite quotations, and then ask them to come in and do a demonstration of the system. Then basis the demonstration, you look at picking up some advantages, USPs, or unique selling features which meet your criteria of the organization. And at some stage, then you look at a full system, buying it, deploying it or implementing it, then training and development, and then finally usage. And then you also have an annual maintenance contract with the vendor who's provided it, because if something is to break down, if the system stops working, if there's a software glitch or a hardware glitch, you need somebody to be able to troubleshoot so that the operations being done by that system do not come to a standstill. This part is to be understood in the third learning outcome. Now, a very interesting unit, because we can see the usage of different types of systems around our own environment today when we look at saying, information systems. So in this particular unit, when you look at this is what is, you get to see the assignment, brief. And in the assignment brief, so this is unit spec. So this allows us to understand what are we studying and what we need to cover to be able to say that we have covered this particular unit. But this is the assignment brief that we need to attempt, which is given by ATHE. And here, what they've done is they've given you a bit of a scenario to understand the context of, why MIS needs to be deployed within the organization. So if I look at this, now it is saying, when you start putting together an assignment brief, and I'll open up a new document as well, so that we can actually look at doing the assignment and see how it needs to be done. So here, if I look at, this particular assignment, so first things first, very basic, Nitin, I might just, go through this. You put the name of the unit that you're doing the assignment for, and then after that, what you do is you copy 1 or 2 tasks for which you're starting to do the assignment. So here, this particular task actually refers to 1.1, and the second one actually refers to 1.2. Okay, so I'll create some space here in the middle, because here we have to talk about, so the first task, and here I might do a bit of an introduction to say what I've understood from the unit, and this could be written in your own words, anywhere between, I would say 20 to 30 words, 30 to 40 words. And I would write something like, while studying the unit MIS, or, I'm just writing a short form, I was able to learn about the different, was able to learn about the usage and types of management information systems, which included knowledge-based system, CRM, ERP, say supply chain, logistics and supply chain, etc., amongst others. Okay, the unit has also given, also provided, say, insight into the use of MIS in an organization and how this is used by managers to make effective decisions related to the organizational goals. In covering the tasks of the assignment, I will be using the example of fast truck food, FTF, given in the brief, given in the assignment brief, and as a result have created this report to meet the assessment criteria for passing this unit. So this is a bit of introduction that you've written. Something in these lines you can write in your own words. And then when you have the first task, what you basically tend to do then is, in this first task, you are basically starting off with analyze. Now, the first thing which I normally recommend when you're starting to do the assignments, is one of the things that I would suggest you take a printout, which is there on the Moodle, is to ensure that you have these command verbs available with you. Now, when it says analyze, it says break the issue into constituent parts, look at its depth, and put some arguments and tell them how it is related to each other. So if I go back on the assignment brief now, so analyze the command verb, it says how data is used within an organization you have chosen. So here, what do we need to write? We need to write about the types of data, which could be data that is being routinely used in the organization, is sometimes used in an exceptional basis, and sometimes, on a summary basis. So what, and sometimes if it is, you find it difficult, say for example, to understand what do I need to include, then it is a good practice to primarily look at, the indicative content. And the indicative content actually tells you what actually needs to be covered, from a perspective of, covering in that unit. So now, if I start off with this particular unit of, MIS, what I'm going to look at is, I talk about the three concepts. Now, what is routine information? So first things first, you just write the topic, routine information. Then we come to exception information. And the third, we come to summary. Now, what is routine information? Now, assuming this has been covered in the, lecture slide that you've covered, done with Dr. Sumro, routine information, just do a definition first. It is journal information. I'm not going to write it out, but provided I know what is routine information, journal information provided for daily use. This is the definition, what is routine information within an organization. Simple. Right, so I've started off with the definition of these three. This will be, information which is outside of normal, range. What is exception? That, the company has been making a loss, for example. So the CEO has asked the accounts manager to generate a profit and loss as of date. Now, this information is not something that you need on a daily basis. But because the company has not been making a loss, you've asked the accounts manager to actually generate a report which will provide the status of the accounts of the company as of that date in terms of profit and loss. So this is an information that you would need on a exception basis. If I pick up any sector, you look at a hospital. If somebody's had an accident and they've gone to the accidents and emergencies department, the information which is required before the patient is looked into or attended by the doctor would be things like can you do a quick series of tests like blood tests and find out if he has any proof of ID, call his near dear ones, things like that. So without that information being available, there is no way that the doctor can actually operate or provide medicine. So in this case, any such information, you pick up a sector, and for us, what has happened is that we have got a sector that the Fast Truck Food Limited as a company, you have to look at is the managing director has asked you to investigate that what kind of a system can be put into place within the organization so it can improve its services to its outlets. So here, exception information, you define it. Then what is summary information? You also define that. Summary information is basically, information that is, I would say definition-wise, is information that is summarized or produced basis weekly, monthly, or annual reports. And this is a type of information type of information which could be presented using a PowerPoint, a report, table, or a graph. Example, so if I say, can we get a summary of how many people actually applied for this course this month? So what we don't want to look at is how many applied and successfully, how many enrolled. What we want is the total number of people applied. So we will do a quick graph from the system, the MIS system, and it will tell me that, okay, 300 applications were made, out of which only 25 were successful. So that is a summary information. But how do I know what it is talking about is, it says use of data within an existing management information system. So the use of data within the management information system is something called routine, exception, and summary. And these are the type of information that you need to define. Now, what we've done only is a definition of, as of now, the three types. But what it is asking us to do is how data is used. So in this case, what we need to be able to, for analysis, there is no way that we will be able to just use it for this like that. Basically, for analysis, what we have to do is, we have to go into a bit more detail to try and find out how the analysis can be actually done. Are you following so far?
Yes.
Right. So in this case, Nitin, what we have to do is essentially look at first the option of, looking at doing a bit of now a more detail. So when I look at a bit more detail, what I want to be able to do in this case now is, when I look at the management of information, so if I then quickly show you, say, a particular example, I'm just going to try and pull out rather than me typing out right now. So in order to do analysis, what we need to be able to do is break the component up. That means talk about, the management information systems in a bit more detail. And how that will be done, we'll be looking at, I'm just going to try and pull out a quick example for you to follow. So this one, we'll be looking at giving an example of in the scenario that we have as of now, Fast Truck Food, is a company which has been given. So what we want to be able to do in this case would be to look at referring to this company which has been given in the assignment brief, and here try and now talk about the type of information system which this particular company would be required to put in place, look at efficient, delivery of the food services or, the food products to its particular outlet. So what I want to be able to do now is relate it to an example here. So it says within one of the organizations. The moment I say within one of the organizations, what I'm going to do is the data within FTF. So take some information from here. It is saying use of for range of purposes, comprehensive understanding business performance, competitive risk, work within law, carry out progress and efficiently. So the data requirements So what we need to do is, why do we need the MIS first in FTF? We have to look at the data requirements within FTF. Need to look at reporting for activities related to business performance, competitor activity, advantages, and law and legislation which needs to be followed in order to provide services to its customers. Now here, what I want to be able to do is, I want to be law and legislation. So here, what I want to be able to do now is talk about a system which is an activity one. It says choose at least 2 businesses to research, including a large and a small organization. The first section of the report must ensure Mr. Patel understands management system of the organization, and your report will include. Now, here, an example would be in your area where you are living. If you have, now this is a fictitious company, okay, Fast Truck Food. I would like to say, in order to analyze the requirements of data and MIS, I would like to compare, or I would like to compare the requirements of MIS used in, I'm not too sure, but Pizza Hut or Domino's or any such outlet that you have. Maybe think of us, business, Subway, any business, wherein what kind of requirements they have. So here I'm going to talk about the the company uses MIS system to collect. So MIS system to first collect customer orders, okay, then maintain inventory and replenish inventory, and then you also use some sort of a system for till, for some sort of generator of receipts. So what I would say is a POS system. So point of sale system to record customer transactions. Now, as you know, Subway and some of the other outlets also have a loyalty card, right?
Yeah. Yes.
The loyalty card, redeeming points of loyalty card for customers and storing information of their purchases. And then last but not the least, it might also have information related to the products being sold from the outlet. I've just made a few assumptions that if I go to, what kind of an outlet do you have? Do you have a Subway there, a Domino's Pizza, Pizza? Do you have any sort of such fast food restaurants there?
Yeah, Domino's is there.
Yeah, so basically when you order a Domino's Pizza, you are looking at, that sometimes when you place an order on the phone, they'll ask you whether it's a delivery or it's a collection. You say it's a delivery, then they will ask you a question like, how you're going to pay for it. You say, okay, I'll pay by credit card. And when you pay for it via credit card, what tends to happen is they will take your credit card detail, record the transaction, and then say, okay, the delivery you could expect 30 minutes, something like that, right? Now, all this transaction currently which is happening, as you will know, is actually being recorded, in what is called a system. And this system is a management information system. Because the task is asking you to compare 2 businesses, so you have an FTF which has been given, and that a second business, you can take a business of your choice. Now, what I've done is, I have basically started the task off by looking at how data is used, what are the types of data and the information. There are 3 types: routine, exception, summary. And then what are the requirements of this data for FTF? And then I've put some requirements down for an outlet like Subway or Domino's, whichever you see is appropriate. And when you look at that, What I also want to be able to do is now compare the two, just to say that this is what the system's requirement are, and that will basically compare and complete this particular task.
I'm
Okay?
so sorry. Connection was really bad.
You are really sorry, Ashwin. You need to improve your timing.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so basically what we want to be able to look at now here would be, when I look at this particular example of the first task, in the first task, what I've done so far is that I have looked at the management information systems requirement, and I've put some details down, which is good enough just to cover the first task. But just to add to it, what I would do is I might now draw a small table here, just to look at inserting a small table in terms of what are the various requirements that you could see the MIS being used for between the two organizations. So here I'm just going to drop a small table, and this table that I'm going to draw, sorry, try and draw it here, that's why it wasn't coming. So here what I'll do is I'll put FTF, and here I'll put Domino's Pizza. Now, what are the kind of information I need? I will just summarize. First is I need products and services information. What kind of pizzas and what kind of services FTF and these guys. Yeah, correct. So these organizations are doing. So products and services could be the first time. Second would be requirements to do say finance or receipts. Customer receipts, which is like a finance system or a POS system to record transactions. Third could be requirements to look at, getting hold of, say, inventory. And the fourth could be something that I look at, would be, say, reports. So products and services would have, 1, 2, 3 types of products which they start selling. You have a pepperoni pizza, you have a margherita pizza, you have a veggie pizza, something like that. Receipts could be here, you're defining the price. So in, say, rupees, could be, the one of the price could be 100, second could be something, but this is coming across from the system. So what you've been able to do now is that you're able to explain that, currently if I have to deploy a system, which is like an information system in the organization, and the minimum requirements for me to have that would be the kind of data that I would need. So I would need data on, the data on the menu. So how many types of pizzas are being sold, or things like that. Sometimes you call up for the order, the customer would say, okay, what would you like to order? And what happens is, if I take you quickly onto the Domino's website, Domino Pizza's website, what you will see is that it comes up with a quick menu. And here, that quick menu basically tells you that, this is what I need to look at when you order a pizza. So types of pizzas, whether you want, E-type, and this can only come across if you have some sort of a system which tells you that, these are the type of pizzas that you can order. We all deal, and there it says chicken pizza, this pizza, that pizza, and all that stuff. So how is this information coming across? This information is actually coming across from some sort of a system, because it has asked me to put a postcode. When I put the postcode in, it shows me deals, and I click on any particular deal. It says create your own deal. It is going to again pull out options wherein it says choose your pizza. All this is actually coming across from some sort of a system. So what you've done in the first class. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I have a question. So if this is regarding like an online portal for order, like also like for this food truck business, are we trying to create something like an online portal for order?
That is correct. So in today's environment, if you look at, there are services like Deliveroo and some of the other services wherein you can go onto the website, place an order, and that order then goes to the vendor in the background, like Domino's, any sort of restaurant, and they are able to deliver locally. So you can place a centralized order, but depending on where you are in the postcode, the local outlet gets in touch with you for your delivery. So what we are doing, Rishwin, right now is we're discussing the MIS assignment, and in that assignment, I've just basically gone through the process of how to start to do an assignment. So we looked at the first task, and it talks about the types of data which are used within an organization. So there are 3 types: exception and summary. Where do you get this from? I'm not dreaming. I'm looking at the unit specification brief. and it is telling me that 1.1, you need to cover these 3 types of data or information which is required to meet this task criteria. Now, in order to do this assignment, the assignment scenario is given, and it is the awarding body is given a fictitious business called ATHE, fast truck food, and then we look at the first activity. It says how to analyze data within an organization. We define the 3 types of data, understand why the requirement of data is there, and then it's saying you must choose 2 businesses, one large and one small. So FTF is a small business, and then we've looked at a local business, either a Pizza Hut or a Domino's or a Subway, which is a global company or a large company which has operations in different countries. And what we're trying to do is recap why do they have this requirement of data or different types of information within the organization. So they need to collect orders, which could be either placed on the website or when the orders are placed on the phone. And when we look at a system, an MIS system is able to capture information in the form of video, voice, email, any sort of other types which have been defined when the system is being constructed. And that then allows the information to be sent across to a local outlet. So the example of the Domino's Pizza outlet was that if I place an order online and I put my postcode in, it is able to pass the order to a local outlet because this MIS system seems to be able to work, pick up the details, and then pass it to a local outlet for delivery. So what we have to do in the first task is not to go into a lot of detail, but here it is just asking us to describe the type of information which is generated from the MIS, and then give an example of maybe an organization like FPF. Why does it need an MIS system? It needs it to track its performance, competitor activity, look at basically applying law and legislation in that country, like tax, for example, when an order is received, and then how it can effectively deliver these services to the customer. So it makes this organization efficient. And then we've compared it with the type of requirements it has by listing them down on the bullet point, and a small table just to show how it is utilized in the 2 organizations, how the difference of information being collected is actually put into the system and is being utilized. And that do your first task. Is that okay?
Sounds good. So wait.
Nitin, have you, just a quick one first,
Yes.
one by one. So Nitin, have you understood
Yes.
this task?
Yes, I understood.
Okay. Okay. Before we started, what we said is you write down the name of the unit, maybe write an introduction of 30 to 40 words, and when you write just the introduction, just summarize what you've actually learned from the unit in 20-30 words, and how are you going to attempt it. Now, if you're going to use the Word document brief, so say that in my report, all the tasks have been covered using the assignment brief. So the tutor or the assessor actually knows that you're actually using this. Now, sometimes students don't look at the organization here because they have their own experience and own experience of working within an organization. They might just pick up these tasks, which are exactly the same here, but they do not have a scenario given. So here you have to assume a company or bring your own example in. And if you're using the specification brief, then you change it to saying that I've created this report using the unit specification brief. So there will be no reference of actually FTF, but when it says, an organization here, analyze the use of data within an existing management information system, what you have to do is use a fictitious organization of your own experience. So you can do the assignment in both ways, but I generally say to the learners that the Word document is much more useful because you always have a scenario given and you can assume that company to include it in every situation, in every task when you actually start writing your assignment. Okay? Now, the second part, just to make sure that we've understood how to do the assignment, what I'm going to do is just look at discussing the second part also. So the first part is done. In the second part, it says use exemplar material to evaluate different features of a management information system. So what I've done was I copied and pasted this particular task, and I put this as 1.2 because here it says, how do I know it's 1.2? Each bullet point is one task. So this is 1.1, this bullet point is 1.2. So it says use the exemplar material. So what we have to do using the exemplar material? So here, what is the exemplar material given? Exemplar material is past truck food, which is the organization given. And what do we have to do is look at the different features of MIS within an organization. So what do I need to cover? So here, depending on, because I started off with FTF as an organization, so what I'm going to do is talk about now the various features of why FTS is going to buy or use an MIS system. So here I would start off by saying, as seen, say for example, as seen in the MIS used by FTF in the previous task. I'm just writing it down. I would like to highlight what is really to highlight or talk about different features of the MIS being used in the organization, right? So what are the features? One is why they've used in MIS, because we need to look at things like relevance of the system.
Yeah.
We need to talk about, how do I know what points are to be talked about? They are given here. Features of the MIS system. So common features could be things like, so if I write common features here, common features of any system. Why do you choose a particular type of system? Is because, it has, say, for example, common features like, graphical user interface. Why would you not pick out a system which is DOS-based or, Linux-based or Unix-based? Because you'll have to memorize all the commands. Then I will look at it as screen, for example, touch screen, not screen, touch screen. Now, most of the terminals, when you go out into the outlets, when you look at ordering fast food or restaurants, they have now either tablets or touch screens to take your order, because it's easier to view the order rather than, look at the image, touch it, and, do the order. So if you have to deploy a system within the organization today, what you're going to be looking at is that you want the system to have a useful feature, which is a menu system. It should have things like a touch screen. You could also look at, various other features, which could mean things like compatibility with different forms, different devices. Now, if Domino's, just to say, is going to put together a website, and this website does not load well on, say, a Firefox browser or an Internet Explorer or a Safari, then there is a technical issue that this system, which they've designed in terms of a website, which is a type of a management information system, because what is a website? Website is basically a system in which this information has been coded, and when you click on certain buttons or options, it gives you that information, and this information has been designed in such a way that it allows you to get useful things from what you're trying to order. So if I just look at very briefly, this pizza, for example, the cheeseburger, and I click on this particular option to customize it, the way it has been displayed, somebody has in the background thought about the requirement that we need to have a picture. The picture then will have basically showing some, ingredients. And when the page opens up, it will show basic ingredients of what can be put into the pizza. Now, either you want a 7-inch, 9.5-inch, medium, or a very large pizza, so the size can be customized. And then this system is just click-based. If I use a tablet, I can say Domino's tomato sauce, I want mozzarella cheese on it, I want some mushrooms, I want tandoori chicken, all that. Now, this is allowing me to customize, the requirements for making this pizza. Now, the blue highlight bars are allowing me to are basically giving me this information that it is only going to allow up to 5 toppings. And then once the pizza is ready, you can add to order, and then you can check out from the basket. Now, this is a type of a MIS system. So what you have to do in the second task, which is basically looking at the features, is basically think of an example, and with that example, talk about certain things which are going to be relevant for you to make a decision of why this MIS system you're going to deploy within FTF. So things like common features, I would want the system to have a graphical user interface. That means something which is menu driven. It could have touch screen. It has compatibility with different devices. That means I can open the system on a mobile, on a tablet, on a PC, on a Mac, and that makes it compatible. I could also look at relevance, which is basically talking about things like that this system can be utilized by different employees within the organization to get data or input data into the system, which is things like orders, things like, for example, generating reports. The system that you're going to use is going to be accurate or is going to have, accuracy in it. That means the data when you are trying to generate a report, the system has to be accurate. It produces meaningful reports which will allow you to, make decisions. So, for example, at the end of the day, the manager in the Domino's Pizza or the FTF outlet would actually generate a report in terms of how many, what is the amount of sale being generated today. So he would run a report which will say that, okay, total orders received were 200 and this is the total value of the orders received. So it has to be accurate because every day the system has to generate reports. Then you could look at other things like usefulness. How will this system be useful for the users? So because if I have to take orders on the phone, manually write it down and then give it to the chef to make it, then it's going to be difficult. So today in most restaurants and places, the moment you get an order, it's displayed onto a large screen within the outlet. I'm assuming we are talking about a fast food outlet like Domino's. And the chef or the people making the pizzas in the back are able to see that this is the next order, this is the next order. And this is useful to them because it allows the portrayal of the information to be done on the system, using various display screens. And last but not the least, what you would also do is, it will allow you to look at, say, one of the other things would be timeliness in terms of the information. That if in Domino's, if they don't deliver a pizza in half an hour, the pizza is actually delivered to you free because the person then you call them up and they say, okay, we'll put a credit of this amount, so the next order that you make, your pizza is going to be free. So in order to maintain customer service, they rely on the information system to put these offers across so that at some point in time, the next order when it is placed, the system is able to give a pop-up or some sort of a reminder saying that the next order for this customer is free. So in order to discuss task 2, which is saying use an exemplar material, what I could do here would be to take a snapshot of this website or whatever example that you are using, and I could actually, place this in the assignment brief, in my report, sorry. So I take a snapshot of this, and what I'm going to do now is place it when I talk about by saying, so here I've talked about FTF, I might just change it to Domino's Pizza, and then what I would say is attached below is a screenshot which shows an example of the MIS system deployed on the centralized, order placement website or order placement Domino's website. And what I'm going to do here is basically drag, the screenshot and put it here. Now, what I need to do then is, once I have the screenshot with me, what I'm going to do is reference it. How would I reference it? I would say, this is picture 1, or you say, for example, picture 1, and then you're labeling it and you're saying Domino's website, and then in the bracket you put source. How do you reference it? You put the source, go back onto the URL, and then put a source here, and then close it. And then towards the end, assuming this is the end of the assignment, what I will do is I'll drop a reference list which will say Domino's Pizza's website accessed on 26 Feb 2019, and I'll close this. Now, so what I've done now is when I place the screenshot, I can make it small, and what I'm going to do is discuss the various features I find which are going to be useful in this MIS. Assuming you're giving an example of a system which is the website, and that is capturing customer information, because on the website, as you can see, if I'm a regular customer, what I can do is I can log in and register. Every time I place an order, it will start maintaining my records of how many orders I've placed, which is the outlet which is supplying me the pizza, what type of pizzas I've ordered. And this is a live example of what you've taken when it talks about using an exemplar material, define or different types of features which would be required in an MIS system. Is that okay?
That's good.
Have you understood?
Yes, I've understood.
Okay, Rishmi, are you clear with this?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm definitely clear with it. So.
Any question?
Like, right now, I don't have that much of question because like I usually do research on the question, and then once I've like done research, like I will know like what exactly I would have in mind to like start the assignment. So yeah, that way.
That's great. Now, sometimes when you have to look at, so that's good. Nitin, any questions at your end?
I just correlate term that is called as front end and back end. MIS with only front end or back end also?
MIS can be front end. In most cases, the system, when I actually missed out in terms of, you getting dropped out, basically, if I go back and answer your question, you have to visualize that the MIS system actually consists of 3 different types of components. First component that you look at is when the MIS system is created is hardware. There is some sort of a software, and the people who utilize it are basically part and parcel of what I would classify as components. So when I look at the website, that means somebody in the background would have created the website, that is the people or the web developer. There is a software which is made using which the website is made, which captures this information, and that software could be PHP, HTML, Java, Flash, and Dreamweaver, and then the website is installed on a particular server, which could be a data server, which could be a web server or a site in the cloud wherein this website is stored. So these are parts of components. These are classified as components of the MIS. Now, when we actually place the order, when we are actually interacting with the MIS, what we are doing is we are in the process of, using the system while placing the order, browsing the website, and that is portraying information depending on what clicks we are doing on the website. So it's in a form of a process. The whole idea of placing the order on the website to buy or order a pizza is actually the process. But how you use that process? By interaction with the MIS system. And last but not the least, when you check out, when you pay for it and it gives you a confirmation saying that your pizza is going to be delivered in 30 minutes or your order has now been placed and you get a receipt of that, is basically a kind of a report which the system is generating to say that your information or the things that you asked for has been now processed, and that is basically nothing but the output which the system is generating, and that is why you're using the MIS. Does it answer your question?
Yes, the thing is that so many processes are related to each other.
Yes.
In case of this pizza delivery system,
yes,
I think it quite in funny ways. The thing is that pizza needs a raw material.
Okay.
Okay. When pizza outlet receive the order, they are using their raw material, which
correct,
is input for the pizza outlet.
Correct.
At the same time, as the back end, we have to calculate the raw material usage and the status of the raw material.
Correct.
For the MI system.
Yes. So in this case,
whether it is
so in this case, Nitin, we have to focus on not the physical process of how they will prepare the pizza. We have to focus on the IT side of the process, which is to understand how the system is helping them to basically process the order. And in the background, once the order has been done, there is some sort of like 50 orders have been processed, the system will give a prompt saying you need to reorder the dough, the cheese needs to be replenished, or the topping needs to be replenished, things like that, the packaging needs to be reordered. And that kind of information might be going into the head office from the MIS system.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. This is also part of MIS. that is raw material and inventory to keep update.
Yes. So the background is,
Yeah.
if we visualize, you have to basically think, how is this information stored? This information is actually stored on a particular hardware, like a PC, somewhere in the head office, and that PC is connected to different outlets and is capturing all this data in terms of reports coming in that, okay, after 500 orders, the outlet needs to be restocked with everything, cheese, toppings, pizza base, packaging, everything. And that process you have to visualize and then put it into the assignment or for the task.
Okay. Why I'm asking this? Because in particular case of pizza outlet, they have the limitation. For example, if they have capacity of 1,000 pizza manufacturing
Yes.
in one day, it doesn't mean it means that in MIS we have to mention one logical condition that order more than 1,001 is not accepted, or we can say order number 1,001 will be denied.
Absolutely correct. But what will happen is, if the orders are being tallied, then at some stage within these outlets, what tends to happen is there's a trigger in the system, which is how the minimum order quantity is defined. If the minimum order quantity goes beyond 500, then automatically from the local storage warehouse, a delivery van from the head office will come in and replenish supplies, because they know they've already done 500 orders and the maximum material they have is up to 1,000, which they can serve out in a day or maybe in a week or whatever your assumption is. You can mention that as an assumption. That is not a problem when you write the assignment.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
the idea here is, you should basically look at, reading the task, and then the idea here is, we are getting into maybe too much detail. So the idea here is to not get into that much detail, but just because it is saying use an exemplar material. So here you have to assume an outlet. I think it's easier for you to look at maybe an outlet which is on the web, and that allows you to bring that screenshot into that, into your Word report. And then with that, what you can do is explain the various reasons why, the company would have looked at creating this web order system, which actually is an MIS, because it allows in one particular location, one particular city, all orders to be captured and then given across for, fulfillment to outlets, and it centralizes the marketing activity of the organization. So what is the output? What is the advantage? Towards the end, here, when I end this task, I would say advantages, just to summarize, just to say advantages of the system. And it would mean that, it is centralized marketing, which is allowing the company to reduce expenses. Something like that. You could do a small conclusion, which basically shows that, a small conclusion would have allowed allowed the organization to put this MIS system in place.
Yes. I got it.
Okay, got it. So my suggestion is, this particular document, I will save it just as an example, and I will email this back to you and Rishwin, so that you are able to follow that. My suggestion would be, assignment writing is not a rocket science, because some part of the assignments are going to be practical. So here, following the scenario, it is asking you to look at what information needs to be covered and then go and answer the task by task. Now, there will be some parts of it which will have theoretical components. So if I look at activity 2, it talks about analyze how business uses management information system. Now, this is purely theoretical, because it will ask you to talk about the different types of management information system. Now, different types could be defined as, things like enterprise system, supply chain system, customer relationship system, and knowledge-based system. So here you have to write all of them. And then when it says analysis, again, break one of the systems down into its component and say how it is helping to improve performance within the organization. And that organization could be an example of your type, or what you will want to follow through in terms of an example in the entire unit. You don't need to take up different companies and different examples. Just pick up one example of a company and just follow it through as far as the whole assignment brief is concerned.
We got it.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So from my point of view, I will send this across, to both, so that you are able to look at this as a bit of an example of how, primarily I would say you need to start maybe doing an assignment. So sampler assignment discussion. So sometimes even when I have to start doing an assignment, if you ask me, I will struggle to understand what is it asking me to do. So you have to look at this unit specification brief, and this unit specification brief actually gives you, the tips to what kind of data is actually required to be utilized to cover in that particular task. Okay. And my suggestion to you would be the first assignment that you do will be, a draft or a working document. So don't worry too much about it. You have to just get it out of the system, because it will give you a bit of confidence to say that, okay, this is how, I have done the assignment. And then we will take, maybe a week or so to give you feedback so that you are able to improve on that assignment. And I'll give you a simple example. One of the other learners, Paul, who's actually on the same course as you, has done an assignment, and what he's done is he sent it to me. So what I've done is I've given him feedback to say, okay, and if I show you what he initially submitted, is something that you will be able to see. This is his first submission. So this is his submission that he's done on the left-hand side. This is the learner submission, this one in particular. Now, what he's done in this assignment is, as you can see, he's copied the scenario and he started with part one. He's explained using a picture of MIS that this is an information system which has different types of devices connected to it. And, the information system allows you to gather resources, data, information from different sources, which then can be pooled into a central system. So he's explained this very briefly. Then he's talked about the second task, which is features, of the management information system. He's gone to part 3, talks about the third task, what is legal and organizational requirements for MIS. So if you see this data that is presented, is like a working document. Now there are no references he's put, but what I've done is, as a first feedback to his assignment, I've said that, okay, can we look at a bit of structure? So can you start writing the task down first, exactly as it is? Create a table of content, and this table of content, and then look at, doing the tasks. So here I've said put the task down first, and then define what is data, what is a system, what is an information system, and he's followed it through by coming to the 3 different small components, and then they make up management information system. And then he's defined that, an accountant uses an MIS like a Sage software or QuickBooks, or Tally that is available in India, which an accountant actually uses as a system to maintain his customer's account. So he's given an example of an accounting system. So you could use something like Tally. And the reason why he has not used the FTF is because he's quite confident and comfortable by using the unit specification brief. So he has created his own examples as he's gone along. And what I've done in the document is I have restructured the document for him to make sure that it is looking like an assignment actually submitted. But in places wherein he has just written the features, just bullet points, this part is asking you to evaluate the different features. So evaluation is something different. You have to talk about an example. The features written are fine. So I've given him a bit of a feedback on this side here to say what you need to do. You need to expand this task into 120 words, wherein you have to take an example of a organization, talk about the system, and then show what features are there in that system. So if you see the assignment that he's done is pretty much fine. When he goes to task 1.4 types of enterprise system, he's defined all the individual ones which are given here, as you can see. Right?
Yes.
So what I've done is I've formatted the document to give it a structure, and this document, and then towards the end, what I've said is you put some references down. So I put some references for him. I know which places he's taken the data from because you've scanned the document for plagiarism, and I can see that some of the books or journals that he's referred, and those are going to come in as references here. And this is what is the assignment. So he needs to work on this primarily, to look at tidying it up, and in some places wherever the data is short or he has to elaborate on it. I've asked him to do that, but pretty much this unit is now achieved, as you can see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So in short, my suggestion is don't get too bogged down by the fact that I need to do this, I need to do that. My suggestion is, as you can see, I've sent him a cover sheet. When I said 1.1, 1.2, you need to resubmit because they were too brief. But other tasks, as you can see, have been achieved. So all he's now going to do is submit an appendix for task 1.1 and 1.2, not redo the full assignment.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes we give you feedback, and I'll show you something on this side for another learner when he has actually achieved the full unit, but one of the activities, for example, 1.2 was not met. So what we asked him to do is, rather than submit the full assignment again, we've just asked him to submit those 1 or 2 activities which I feel have not been met. So he submitted as an appendix to the original assignment, and that way the whole unit has now been classified as a pass.
Okay.
Is that okay? So
yes.
I hope and the other things which I would quickly refer to when I ask you to refer to the system. If I go back onto Moodle, in Moodle when you go to your course, sometimes what you will find is that the slides which have been drawn up here, if I look at going to learning outcome 1 that we are discussing. So as you can see, some part of the information we've already provided what you need to cover: routine information, exception, summary, types of MIS, why is MIS required. As you can see, he's taken up an image from the slide itself, all as you can see, right? Then he has gone on to define the system. Benefits he has actually taken from the slide, which is fine, which is okay, as long as you reference it. Now he's talked about the types of MIS, the role of MIS. So we've given you automatically, indicators to what actually needs to be covered, but you need to develop it and, just highlight it a bit more, so that you need to put example also in the assignment when you're doing it. So what we have done is we have covered theory primarily in the slide, but in order to meet the assessment criteria, sometimes you have to elaborate the theory by showing an application, and the application by covering an example.
Okay.
Okay, so there is some other, one other thing which I will briefly show you would be that if I look at a presentation, just to show you, I will say read the task carefully. These are tips for doing the assignment. So I'll ask Sami to email this to you as well. You need to focus on detail, look at the command verbs. Now sometimes when you have explained, described, define these kind of command verbs, you have to use between 70 to 100 words. If you have assess, examine, clarify, analyze, you need to look at answering the task in about 100 to 125 words. And when you have critically evaluate, compare, contrast, you have to look at about 150 to 200 words. Reference it, but how do you know that which has to be covered? Now in the first task, you primarily look at theory. In the second task, you have to always, when you have these type of command verbs, you have to look at theory plus application. And when you have these type of command verbs, you have to use theory, application with an example. And then when you format your document, we've given some tips in terms of how to start with an introduction, write the LOs, use a font size 12, do a line spacing of 1.5, draw a table of content, include conclusion towards the end of the assignment, and then reference and, do the bibliography. So start putting together a document, and that document, will basically be a working document. Send it across for feedback, and we'll give you some feedback to say this is good, this is not good. As you can see, output of the MIS, schedule reports, aims of the MIS, elements, hardware, software, the process, the 3 types I was explaining. You have hardware, software people on one side, you have process, which is basically control, and the input output which is being done on the system before it is processing it is the process, and then towards the end you get an output which is nothing but reports, or the display that you get on your screen. So if I click on this button, there is some input which has happened. I've done the input by click. The output is that it is process of information which is understood. The mouse has clicked. It has given the instruction to the computer to say that please show the next slide. and it shows you the next slide. But this is the type of an MIS.
Okay.
And then you cover it up. So my suggestion is you'll have to go through the presentation, look at the assignment brief, start doing it task by task, and keep going about it till you have a working document which is 10, 12 pages long. And then send it to the tutor for feedback. The tutor will give you some feedback in terms of what is right, what is wrong, where you missed, and what you need to add. And once that has been done, that will become a final document.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions that you have?
No, right now I don't have any question.
Okay, good stuff. Now, basically, my suggestion to you would be to go through the presentations. I will make sure that a copy of this recording is also sent across. And once you go through this recording and you have gone through this, create the working document and then send it over, by Friday. Don't need to sit on it or wait on it and, sleep on it. Just send it out by Friday, whatever you have done, and then we will give you some feedback on it and then start doing the second unit, what you have done. Now, this unit, computer systems and software, are simple units because here you are basically covering theory. The computer programming one will require a bit of, reading to do, and that reading needs to be done from the ebook which has been provided. And we'll have a separate session on that if that is required. I can ask Dr. Sumo because he's not well today, but maybe the other session, what I can ask him to do is do a session specifically on doing an example, for computer programming. Okay. And if required, what you can do is you can also look at, asking Sameet sometimes for an extract of the assignment, just as a task, so that, he can send you a sample 1 or 2 tasks for you to look at. So it helps you to start going, to understand how to attempt the assignment or how to go about it. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Good stuff. So what I'm going to do is, do you have any further questions?
No, not now.
So if there are no further questions, what I'll do is I'll end this session now. And what I'm going to do is, just after the session, I'm going to send across 2 things. One, a copy of this presentation. Second will be, the sampler that we created for the assignment 1.1 and 1.2 tasks. And the third would be to send you a presentation on the assignment discussion, the 3-4 slides which I've showed you how to attempt an assignment and what to look at, so that you have it as a ready reckoner for all the tasks, for all the units that you're going to submit assignments for. Okay? And then Dr. Suno will catch up with you on Thursday in the next session, and he will continue with, with regards to the learning outcome 3 for MIS.
Okay. I will attend that session.
Okay, no worries. Thanks for joining Nitin today. Thanks, Rishwan, for joining, and we'll catch up with you on Thursday.